Hello everybody, Tito here from RVwithtito.com. Now today I want to talk to you about solar charging. Now if you've ever thought of adding a solar charging system to your RV, perhaps you like to go to the beach, perhaps you want to go camp out in the woods at a national park or state park and don't want to always have to rely on your generator for power, adding a solar charging array to your RV is something you might want to consider. So today I want to walk through the solar charging system on my RV, and maybe it'll give you some ideas for something you can do on your own. So let's take a look. So let's start up on the roof of the RV, which is where I have my solar panels. So you'll notice I have 3 solar panels up here, and these are not your typical solar panels. They're made by a company called Unisolar, and it's a weatherproof solar mat basically with an adhesive on the underside, and it sticks to the roof of my RV, and they're pretty cool because you can't even see them from the ground. Now I have 3. One of them is a really long one. If you notice, this really long one's a 128 watt panel, and I was able to get 2 smaller ones. They're each 68 watt panels, and I found a place to put them on the roof. So the 2 68 watt panels are hooked in series, and then both of those are connected to the single 128 watt panel, and with 2 cables going down into this vent cover that heads down into the bottom or the underside of my motorhome. Now running from the roof of the RV, you can see the vent cover right there. And the cable actually runs down through the inside of the RV and into this storage compartment where I have, see, those are the 2 10 gauge wires right there that run from the roof through that conduit, and I still have about an 18-foot run to go to my charge controller, so I'm going to actually splice that 10 gauge solar cable to a 4 gauge wire to minimize a voltage drop. So underneath, I've climbed underneath the motorhome. You'll see I have that cable going into this junction box, which I've spliced to 4 gauge cable and run it through this 3/4 inch flexible PVC conduit that I'm going to run all the way up the other side of the RV to the compartment where my charge controller is. On my Class C motorhome, I'm limited on the storage compartments and that I can use for charge controller and my battery bank. So what I've had to do is convert a couple of existing storage compartments to create a place for a charge controller, which lives in here, and I'll show you more of that in a second. And I've converted an existing storage bay here to house my battery bank. Okay, so now let's take a look inside this compartment I created to put my charge controller in. So I've labeled all the cabling here just to make it nice and clean. Here's the conduit coming in, and my solar positive and my solar negative here. I've got my positive running through a cutoff switch that goes directly into my MORNINGSTAR TRISTAR charge controller. Now coming directly out of my charge controller is the line going directly to my battery bank. So here's the positive battery output from the charge controller, and I want to let you know that this is actually a 2 gauge wire now, 2 gauge braided wire going into this cutoff switch here, so I could totally cut off my battery bank and my solar array from the charge controller should I need to open the charge controller up and do some maintenance on it or whatever, just for safety purposes. There's some other cables coming out of the charge controller for a ground and some monitoring cable, and the negative, also the negative 2 gauge wire coming out to the battery bank. So battery positive right there, battery negative right there. Okay, so taking a look at my battery bank, I've got 2 205 amp hour 6-volt batteries in here wired in series, so that should give me my 12-volt system. And these are all 2-gauge cable that I made to connect these batteries. So there's also a lot of additional wiring in here. There's the conduits coming directly from the charge controller compartment. There's a few other connections here for monitoring. I have a trimetric battery monitoring system that I'll show you in a second. And so there's some terminal blocks here I added just to simplify the wiring. And there's also a shunt over there that's hooked up directly in line with my negative battery output that provides current output readings to my battery monitoring system. So a lot going on in here. There's some conduit going out the back of the compartment here, and yeah, that's about it. I've also created this this little tray here, so if I wanted to work on my batteries, I can just simply slide it out, and makes it easier to access, and it secures nicely when I'm on the road. Now while I'm camping or out boondocking or basically running off of my batteries, I want to be able to see what my current state of charge is for my battery bank, and I also want to be able to see how much current or load I'm currently placing on my batteries at the time, so I can tell if I need to conserve more or how much I have left. So I installed this battery monitoring system, and it's from a company called Bogart Engineering, and it's called the Trimetric 2025 RV. So this is a version made for RVs, and the only difference between this and this other non-RV version, I think, is the packaging. It's a little nicer, little more aesthetically pleasing, so you can mount it inside your RV. So let's take a quick look at this. I'm going to put together another video to talk about some of the settings and features in here in more detail. Okay, so taking a look at my primary battery bank right now, it's set to, right now the current state of charge is 13.2. Actually, this is with a little load on it. I got some lights on and my fantastic fan blowing in the back and a couple other minor things running. So a little bit of charge coming in, and I can also see here that my current draw on my battery bank is 2.8 amps. So it's really handy when I'm using my 12 volt. I know exactly what I'm currently drawing, so I can conserve my power if I need to. Also, I can see my current percentage of full, 99%. I've just reset it recently, so I can store my amp hours in here, and it calculates how much I have remaining on my battery bank. Now finally, one of the really cool things I like is that I can also plug it into a secondary battery, which is my chassis battery, and I can see what my current charge is on my chassis battery, so I know what it's going to start when I turn the key next time. Now I have a trickle charge on it right now, so it shows that it's nicely charged at 13.1 volts. So pretty neat unit. I'll put a link to this where you can get one on the blog. Okay, so that's a quick overview of the solar charging system on my RV. If you are interested in doing something like this, a little bit of research and a little bit of know-how will help you save some money, and you can actually do this yourself. For more information, you can always check out my website on rvwithtito.com, and subscribe to my channel, and there'll be more videos about solar charging and RV stuff in general. So subscribe and leave a comment below if you have questions, and I'll be glad to answer them. So as always, happy RVing everybody, and see you next time.